At first light, a 150-meter longline vessel eases away from the harbor, leaving the safety of land behind. The giant longline vessel passes the outer breakwater, committing fully to open ocean and the Dale's high-risk hunt. Hours later, the vessel drives into deeper water, where the swell builds and land disappears below the gray horizon. The wind strengthens and waves steepen, signaling entry into the rough offshore grounds where giant striped marlin are known to feed. As the swell turns heavy, the captain defines the strike zone, describing the immense power and value of the target marlin. Below the bridge, the crew hear how a giant striped marlin's size, speed, and price justify the risks of this expedition. With the briefing complete, the crew begin rigging the industrial longline system, transforming the wet deck into a combat workspace. Industrial circle hooks are baited one by one, each piece of fish or squid becoming a calculated invitation to a giant predator. As the first section of longline feeds over the stern, the hunt for a single massive striped marlin officially begins. Buoys, weights, and anchors are added in sequence, designing a precise underwater highway through the stormy feeding zone.
Far below, baited hooks drift into the dark water column, aligning with currents that funnel life toward the longline.
On the surface, the buoy line heaves in the swell, tracing the invisible path of steel and bait below.
Mid-water, the hooks settle into position, their baits fluttering just above the depth where striped marlin often roam.
Back on deck, instruments track line tension and drift, converting raw ocean violence into manageable, measurable data.
Far astern, a single dark dorsal briefly cuts a wave crest before disappearing again into the gray swell. The crew notice nothing yet, but deep below, the baited steel begins to share water with an unseen hunter.
The buoy line jerks unpredictably in the heavy swell, hinting at turbulence below but revealing nothing of what moves there. Mid-water, a colossal striped marlin appears, cruising parallel to the longline, studying the strange pattern of baited hooks.
Hydraulic brakes creak softly as the cable settles, each vibration recorded in tension logs that will soon matter. Down below, hooks gleam faintly as currents pulse, the bait holding just steady enough to tempt a decisive strike.
The surface grows meaner, white spray tearing off crests as the buoy line shudders harder against the wind.
Suddenly, a striped marlin's dorsal and shoulders rise near a buoy, briefly breaking the surface before sliding back into gray water. On deck, no one has yet seen the fish, but subtle spikes flicker across the tension display.
Below, tiny baitfish scatter as pressure wakes ripple along the line, hinting at the marlin's growing curiosity.
The crew secure harness points and safety lines, preparing for the possibility that these numbers soon translate into violent force. Outside, buoys now twitch sideways, not just up and down, showing a new, directional pull beneath the swell.
Mid-water, the giant marlin finally closes in, holding just beside one baited hook, gills pumping as it hesitates.
Tension spikes harder on the gauges, and the crew step into position, each man locking into his assigned role.
Along the line, tiny bursts of silt and bubbles jump in sequence, as if the cable itself had started to come alive.
On the surface, a cluster of buoys surges forward in a straight line, dragged by something far stronger than the waves alone. On the surface, a cluster of buoys surges forward in a straight line, dragged by something far stronger than the waves alone. Near those buoys, the striped marlin explodes through a crest, body arcing just above the water before crashing back in a heavy splash.
The captain orders the haul, converting a passive soak into an all-out fight against a single, unseen giant.
The longline snaps fully tight, turning each roll of the hull into a violent, high-stakes tug on hidden weight. The cable thrums like a live wire, signaling that the long, silent prelude is over, and the real battle is about to begin.
Deep below, the striped marlin finally commits, lunging in and clamping down on the baited circle hook. The hook sets hard as the marlin turns, and the longline instantly transforms from hanging cable into a stretched steel spring. The Marlin drives downward in a steep arc, trying to use depth and angle to lever the hook free. Muscles bunch along its flanks as it sprints cross-current, turning the longline into a cutting wire in the water.
Each surge is shorter than the last, as lactic acid builds and the Marlin's explosive power begins to taper.
A close look at the hook reveals why circle designs dominate modern longline fisheries targeting powerful billfish. The fish drops back toward depth once more, but the arc of the line shows it no longer controls the fight. Gradually, the Marlin rises in a wide spiral, pulled more by the vessel's momentum than by its own fading strength.
A brutal jolt tears through the longline, and for the first time the crew truly feel the monster.
Near the surface, the Marlin's dark shape now tracks just below the chop, tethered to a line leading straight to the vessel.
Crewmen clip into their harnesses, checking buckles and straps, ready for the chaotic minutes when the fish first shows. Behind the stern, the Marlin bursts through a crest, head and shoulders lunging out before slamming back into the wake. On deck, winch operators feather the controls, trying to balance raw pulling power against the risk of tearing hardware apart.
At the surface, the billfish now runs broadside, dorsal cutting the chop as it drags buoys and cable in a wide arc.
Meanwhile, other crew prepare lifting straps and additional lines, anticipating the moment the fish comes tight alongside. Near a buoy cluster, the Marlin erupts again, half its body clearing the surface in a single, heavy, low arc. The vessel swings to keep the line off its stern, turning the fight into a controlled, circular tug-of-war.
Repeated surface runs carve foamy scars into the swell, each pass slightly shorter than the last.
On deck, every man leans back against his harness, legs shaking as the fish's last long surface run begins to fade.
The fish now planes just under the surface, its dorsal cutting the chop like a fin torpedo marked to the cable.
In one last burst, the striped Marlin rolls at the surface, flank and gill plates lifting clear before flopping back into the swell. The captain calls for lifting straps, shifting the operation from open water fight to controlled recovery alongside the hull.
Winch speed drops, trading pace for control as the crew prepare to bring several 100-kilogram of wild muscle to the rail. Along the rail, straps are readied, each loop representing a potential failure point when fish and vessel finally meet. A steep swell lifts the Marlin's head level with the rail, jaws open as water pours from its gills beside the hull. From above, crewmen lean out to slide the head strap behind the gill plates, securing the fish's most dangerous end.
With the head strap set, the crew clip it to a secondary line, creating a new handle on several 100 kilograms of fish.
Alongside, the Marlin's body now rides half in, half out of the swell, pinned close to the steel hull. The fish's forward half finally comes over the rail, while its tail still thrashes in the water outside the hull.
Outside, a wave carries the Marlin sideways, its full length briefly visible as it slides along the surface beside the hull.
On deck, crewmen tighter both head and belly straps, locking the fish's spine against sudden, violent twists.
A final twist near the stern sends the Marlin's body corkscrewing partly into the air before it crashes back against the hull. With the fish pinned tight to the hull, twin winches begin lifting in unison, trading ocean drag for pure, dead weight.
Every few centimeters, the crew stop the lift to check straps and rigging, knowing that hardware failure here would be catastrophic.
Outside the hull, the Marlin's tail still sculls weakly, half submerged as the straps gradually steal the last of its movement. On deck, more of the fisher's length appears, its cobalt stripes glistening as seawater pours across the steel.
Side, the tail finally clears the water, swinging free for a moment before dropping onto the deck with a heavy thud.
The fish now lies fully aboard, but its mass still shifts dangerously with each roll as the hull rides the swell.
Once secured fore and aft, the Marlin transitions from adversary to cargo, a single massive unit of future product.
Now the focus shifts from survival to handling, as the crew clear space around the fish for safe deck operations.
Chocks and anti-slip blocks are hammered into place, turning the moving hull into a stable platform around the fish.
A heavy roll sends water flooding across the deck, momentarily making the Marlin's head appear to surge over the rail.
High-pressure hoses come out, washing blood and slime away from boots and equipment, while keeping the fish centered in its lane.
A lifting frame is rigged overhead, ready to take part of the fish's weight and relieve stress on the deck lashings.
With a short lift, the head and shoulders settle deeper onto the deck, water streaming off the Marlin's flanks in sheets.
Close up, every scale and stripe is visible, a map of a life spent sprinting through sunlit water, now ended on cold steel.
A tape measure runs from bill tip to tail fork, confirming just how far beyond ordinary this individual truly is.
Another roll sends the Marlin sliding a few centimeters, its bulk momentarily dominating every workable inch of the rear deck.
With the fish recentered, chalk marks outline where primary cuts will later separate premium loin from the rest. A portable scale head is wired in, ready to capture total mass once the Marlin is lifted cleanly off the deck.
As the scale settles, a final twitch from the tail rattles hardware and reminds everyone what that number truly represents.
Once the weight is logged, the Marlin is laid back down and repositioned for efficient bleeding and cleaning.
Additional safety lines are tied off to deck strong points, ensuring the carcass cannot shift during the coming work.
From above, the fish's body dominates the work zone, forcing men and tools to orbit its bulk like a central pillar.
For a brief moment, cameras capture a record shot, crew flanking the fish that just rewrote their season's balance sheet.
After the photo, hoses resume, clearing the deck again so knives and tables can be brought forward.
From the gantry, the Marlin now lies deeply inside the working bay, leaving only narrow paths for men to pass.
Crew check that the circle hook is still seated correctly before any cuts are made, confirming a clean, legal capture. With documentation complete, the hook and leader are finally removed, separating the fish physically from the gear that caught it.
Now unhooked yet fully secured, the Marlin lies still, ready to transition from specimen into carefully managed inventory.
Tables, bins, and wash stations are set, converting the open deck into a temporary, fully functional cutting floor.
Hoses rinse the fish one final time, removing residual slime and debris before the first precise cut is made.
With a nod from the captain, the cutting crew receive permission to begin transforming this single fish into multiple products. The first deep cut behind the head reveals a massive cross-section of pale, dense, striped Marlin flesh. Large loins are lifted free and laid into stainless bins, each piece representing thousands of dollars in potential revenue.
Eventually only head and skeleton remain, stark reminders of the size and structure of the animal that drove this voyage.
Below deck, a chilled processing room receives the loins, where workers trim, portion, and prepare them for freezing. Graded portions slide down the line, separating premium center cuts from secondary pieces destined for other markets. Vacuum sealers hum, locking each cut in plastic, with labels detailing species, catch area, vessel, and date.
Packed cartons move into the blast freezer, where temperatures drop low enough to pause bacterial time for months. Inside the hold, stacks of frozen product build row by row, turning fishing success into stable, tradable inventory.
The hatch closes on the filled hold, and the vessel finally points its bow back toward the distant coastline.
As swells shorten and the horizon steadies, the Longline vessel transitions from battlefield back into cargo ship. In port, frozen pallets are craned from the hold into a waiting cold storage facility, keeping the chain of low temperature unbroken.
Cartons move from warehouse to refrigerated trucks and containers, heading toward high-end markets far from the landing port.
At a distribution hub, pallets are resorted, directing certain lots of striped marlin exclusively to restaurant-grade customers. A final refrigerated truck backs into a city alley, delivering a small but valuable consignment to an upscale restaurant's rear door.
In the kitchen, the head chef opens a chilled carton, checking labels before inspecting the quality of the frozen marlin loins.
After tempering, fillets are trimmed and portioned, revealing clean, firm marlin flesh, ready for high-end preparation.
Steaks hit the hot pan, searing quickly before being finished with simple seasoning that lets the fish itself dominate.
In the dining room, servers carry plates of striped marlin to linen-covered tables, connecting ocean risk to urban comfort. Diners cut into the fish, finding firm, moist flesh whose texture and flavor depend entirely on every step of the chain behind it.
Outside, the city sleeps, while far offshore the swell still rises and falls, waiting for the next vessel to return.